Webb, CFB, Wildcat Media, Wildcat Esports, SAC, and Red's Life is excused. Moving into the approval of minutes and agenda, starting with today's agenda. Is there any discussion for today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll go into the vote on approving today's agenda. All those in favor of approving today's agenda, please raise your hand. All those opposed and all those who abstain, that passes 11-0-0. Moving on to the minutes of last week, is there any discussion for last week's minutes? Seeing our audience member?
I have a meeting later, so I won't be able to declare my candidacy later. So can I declare my candidacy for Senate?
Go ahead.
Declare my candidacy.
What's your name?
My name's Jackson Beckman. I declare my candidacy for the Senate.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
What year of Senate are you running?
Alrighty. Anyways, continuing the discussion of today's or last week's minutes. Is there any further discussion on last week's minutes? Seeing none, does anyone not approve of unanimous approval? All right, that passes unanimously. Moving on to announcements. There are no announcements. Moving on to guest speakers. There are no guest speakers. Moving on to executive reports, starting with President Lunahara.
Good morning, everybody. As you all know, it's a bit moody outside, so if you haven't seen the campus announcement, Trunk or Treat is now in the SCMPR. So if you're participating in the Trunk or Treat, make sure you show up early and start setting up your tables and your costumes and whatnot. In addition, advanced registration starts November 3rd. So for some of you that are still here for the spring, make sure you sign up for your classes. Don't be late because, you know, you don't want to end up not having classes for the spring, right? In addition, I've been working with the deans of the school on a project in partnership with multiple other companies, including MVCC, Refinery Foundation, and some other small business development companies. So the whole goal of this project is to create an entrepreneurship lab here on campus. It's related to the Center of Business Excellence. Hopefully, if things go well, we should be launching in the spring. So if any of you have any business ideas or anything you'd want to start, that should be launched in the spring, and the school will partner with you in terms of dealing with legal issues with your business, in terms of setting it up, in terms of anything, pretty much. And this is not only private to business majors. If you're a CS major and you want to start an application, or I don't know what you want to start, you could take part in this. But as of right now, it's still in the works, and it's a very exciting project. In addition to this project, I'm working with the deans. The other stuff with the president is still ongoing, and everything else I've mentioned previously is still ongoing. In regards to the resolution system, I have discussed with the president, and it is currently up and running. So as of now, our resolutions have very strong influence on the school. I'm not saying that they are obligated to do the things that we send in the resolution, but we have very strong influence in regards to the resolution. So I urge everybody, before you send out resolutions to these departments, for example, facilities or any of these other departments, make sure you've tried everything first. So go to the facilities, talk to them. A lot of these resolutions can be done without a resolution. So try that first, and resolution should be like a last resort, almost to some degree. Or if you need to document it, because it's a big project that involves multiple departments within the school, like for example, you want to build a new lab in Donovan, for example, right? And that involves IT, that involves facilities, that involves a lot of people. So in that case, you would send out a resolution for it. For example, I'm not saying you should do that, but you get the idea. Like for example, the TikTok on the clock, it's just setting up clocks on campus. You could go to facilities, you could go to design and develop, coordinate with them, get it done. Does not really need a resolution. So before you write up a resolution, make sure you've tried everything, because as of now, our resolution has a lot of influence in regards to these departments, because they go straight to the office of the president. Besides that, there was a little question about past resolutions. Like I said, just try and work on them before you resend them as a resolution. But if anybody has any comments regarding the resolution system, you may ask them. But that's all my report. Thank you.
Alrighty. Moving on to Vice President reports. Howdy, y'all. Still trying to work with Pro Tem Ludowan to figure out some scheduling issues that we're seeing with some of the committees. Along with this, I'm beginning scheduling for the semesterly one-on-ones that I have to do with the org heads and the senators, so that will be out shortly. Additionally, for an election case sense, the candidacy period does end this week for the executive positions. We will then be moving into the grace period. For senator applications, that's still going on throughout the grace period, but for executive positions, the Chief Justice, the Secretary, and the Treasurer, that all ends after this meeting, after open forum. Individuals, please announce candidacy in open forum today. I yield. Vice Treasurer. Secretary Wu.
No report.
All right, that concludes the executive reports. Moving on to direct reports, starting with Chief of Staff.
Hi, everyone. Last week, the director application was officially closed. This week, we've been conducting interviews, and I encourage everyone that has applied for these positions to book a time so that we can end this process faster. And we also have started to plan for the professional development day, so be on the lookout for an email about that. And that's it.
All right, Director of PR.
My interviews have ended.
All right. Director of Wellness and Inclusion is absent. Res Life is absent. So moving on to the advisor reports. Advisor Artajani. All right. Advisor Wadsworth.
Like the president said, there is trunk or treat tonight, so please show up. Grab some candy if you are participating in the trunk. We look forward to seeing you and all of the decorations you might have. If not, bring your friends, costume or no costume, no worries at all. We look forward to seeing you all, and hopefully you get lots of candy. Thank you.
All righty. That concludes director reports. Moving on to committee reports, starting with Policy Committee. Howdy, y'all. Policy Committee has several bills on the table today, and we're looking to push more out soon. If you'd like to join us for our meetings, it's at 3 in Kinsella, 8219 every Thursday. Thank you. All right. Budget Committee.
Budget meetings are Wednesdays, 11:30 to 12:30. It's in the SGU conference room. I think that's what that room is called now. In regards to the budget committee, like mentioned previously, we're still working very hard on the Financial Policy 12 edition. Hopefully, we're planning on having it having it on the table sometime before the end of the year. And also, we're working on a reserves poll coming up very soon. I yield.
Student Success Committee.
Week, Wednesday 6 to 7 in Kinsella A219. We are going to continue working on the projects we started last meeting. The agenda from last week is already online on Engage. The meeting details and meeting minutes will also be there shortly. The agenda for the next meeting will also be there soon, and we hope to see everybody there.
All right. Student Center Advisory.
Good afternoon, everyone. We had our second meeting last week, Friday, and we discussed about the sign change. Currently, this is still, I've contacted facilities, and they said that they would look into it somewhere in their schedule due to them being busy. This week, we will be having our next meeting tomorrow at 12 p.m. I hope to see you there.
All right. Wellness inclusion, can I have the co-chair make a report?
Hi everyone. So this past Tuesday we had our second meeting and we discussed potential events we want to hold this semester.
Thank you. I yield.
All righty. Food committee?
Hello. Food committee is having our first meeting today at 4 p.m. in the Student Center Theater. There's a lot we plan to discuss, and I hope to see people there. I yield.
All right. Safety and facilities?
The time and place of Safety and Facilities Committee has been officially announced, has been decided. Time was decided about 2 weeks ago. It's going to be at 11 a.m. on Wednesdays from 11 to 12. And the meeting place is going to be Kinsella at room 227, whatever that is. That's what I was just told, but that's what's going to be. And both UP and facilities will be there at the meetings. I've also have heard though from some of my senators that there is a scheduling conflict with the new time of budget committee. So I'm guessing to try and work out to see if maybe I can have some of my senators switch around for who's on that committee, and try and have my senators at least be there for like 30 minutes, and they can leave after the first 30 minutes to go to the budget. That's that no put.
All righty. Class gift?
In getting class gift up and running. I'm hoping to decide on a meeting location with the office manager this afternoon, and then hopefully we'll have our first meeting tomorrow. To all the members of the class gift committee, if our first meeting is tomorrow, you'll receive a copy of the agenda and minutes from last year later this evening. I yield.
All righty. That concludes committee reports. Moving on to org reports, starting with Web.
This past week, Webb has hosted our Walters Wicked Fest, which had a wonderful turnout. Thank you all to who showed up. Tonight we have bowling, and a reminder, you can wear your Halloween costumes, just please make sure they do follow code of conduct, so no weapons, etc. And then also a reminder, please do not show up until 10:30. Also coming up is Sunday the 2nd. We have our football watch party with the Bills versus the Chiefs, and we have Webb's Name That Tune event in partnership with Jazz and Hip Hop and Wildcat Media on the 3rd. We have prizes and food, so we'll see you all there. I yield.
All right. CFP?
Everyone, so not a lot to report on other than our new policy amendments that me and Vice President Shiput have been working on for the last couple weeks. They're on the agenda for today. That's all I got.
All righty. Wildcat Media? All right. Wildcat Esports?
Hello everyone, Wildcat Esports is still going well. 8 teams are performing well, and FragFest planning and logistics are mostly done. Just some small things here and there that need to be worked out. And speaking of, events coming up include our SUNY Poly Championship for Nintendo, which is this Saturday, and FragFest, which is next week, Friday to Sunday. That is all.
All righty. That concludes organizational reports. Moving on to approval of changelog. There's nothing to approve. Moving on to old business, starting with Bill 2526-08. Senator Weddle.
Bill 2526-08.
You may continue.
The purpose of this bill is to update committee-related policies to the current day and provide a better outline for committee responsibilities and requirements.
Alrighty. Moving into discussion of the bill at hand. Is there any discussion for this bill? Seeing no, it's a committee, no second needed. Senator Weddle?
Point 0, I see that it states ad hoc committees, including election, must give a transition document when the committee has concluded. Well, I recognize that it's hopefully obvious it's referring to election committee. I think it might be worthwhile to capitalize election and insert the word committee afterwards, just so there's no confusion whatsoever. So I'd like to make a motion to make those changes, that is capitalizing the E in election and adding committee afterwards, which should also be capitalized.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Senator Novak. Moving to discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment to capitalize the E and add the word committee afterwards? Our audience member? No? All right, seeing no discussion, we'll be moving into the voting on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And all those who abstain, that passes 11-0-0. Back into the bill as a whole. Our audience member.
Election committee, when it's discussed, it has chaired by the SGU vice president or the elections chair. You cross out or the elections chair. I would strongly advise against this, as in the case of you have a vice president running for a position in an election, who is supposed to chair the committee? You should have this outlined more clearly. You shouldn't just get rid of or the elections chair. You should have this more open so that in the case that there is some sort of conflict of interest, that there is someone else who can fill this role discreetly without needing to jump through hoops in policy. I yield.
All right, Senator Novak.
Can I make a motion to uncross out all elections chair?
We have a
In
motion.
the section our audience member was talking about.
We have a motion within Appendix E under Election Committee to uncross out the or the election chair section within the first line. Do we have a second? Second by Senator Rose. Moving to discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion for this amendment? Senator Weddle.
President would recognize the conflict of interest and choose not to chair the committee. I'm not sure if we need to specify it. I yield.
Alrighty. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go into voting on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And all those who abstain? All right, that passes 7-0-4. Back into the bill as a whole. Is there any further discussion for the bill? Senator Weddle.
We're on discussion of election committee. I see that one of the bullet points is charged with reviewing candidacy forms from candidates, signature collection, biography, and headshot collection. My understanding is we don't practically collect headshots anymore because there's not really a way to display them within elections on Engage. I don't know if we need to still be collecting headshots. So I'd like to make a motion to strike and headshot collection and insert an and before biography.
We have a motion to strike and headshot collection and reinsert the struck out and before biography. Is there a second? Second by Senator Ludewan, or Pro Temp Ludewan, apologies. Moving to discussion on the amendment. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none, we'll go to voting on the amendment. All those in favor of crossing out and headshot collection and unstriking and biography, please raise your hand. Rose, is your hand up? Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those opposed and all those who abstain. That passes 10-0-1. Back into the bill as a whole. Is there any further discussion for the bill? Seeing no further discussion, we'll go to voting on the bill as a whole. All those in favor of passing Bill 2526-08, please raise your hand. All those opposed and all those who abstain, that passes 11-0-0. That concludes old business. Moving on to new business, starting with Bill 2526-09, Senator Horton.
Motion to accept Bill number 2526-09.
Continue.
You have to give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. Thank you. We, the members of the student government act. The purpose of this bill is to revise Article 6, 6.3, updating the transfer/promotion process and adding a subsection for acting/appointing to establish a clearly defined process for both temporary and permanent positions changes.
Alrighty. Moving to discussion on the bill. Is there any discussion for Bill 2526-09? Senator Weddle.
The addition of 6.3.6, more specifically 6.3.6.1, stating that acting appointments must be documented in legislation. I'm just curious about the need to vote on this, given some positions are simply appointed and the Senate isn't involved at all in the confirmation of those positions. I'm thinking specifically of our assistant positions, the vice treasurer, the chief of staff. Those are simply chosen by the executive board. It seems, I understand the point of documentation, but were there for some reason to be an acting appointment for either of those positions or any other position that is simply appointed, I'm not sure why the Senate would need to vote on it. I'm going to yield back to Colonel Sanders.
Thank you. Senator Novak.
I think that's there just because we had the reason that if that wasn't there, we'd have the problem that the exec board could theoretically full house the Senate, or the appointed senators that are all their friends and would say yes to every bill they would pass. And this is just trying to limit the power of the exec board to prevent that. At least I remember that being the discussion that popped up during policy committee, because otherwise, as mentioned, if senator appointment was done not through legislation, we can just have an exec board put all the friends as senators and then pass like a bill that like completely dissolves web or something like that. And we therefore we need this as a balance of power, if that makes sense. I think that's why it's in there.
All right. Senator Fisher.
I would say for this, it's acting appointments, whereas the chief of staff, when they're appointed, that's a permanent appointment, where these are acting, and I say for acting, the Senate should have the final say. I yield.
Senator Weddle.
To respond to Senator Fisher first, my curiosity there then is why the Senate isn't involved in the permanent appointment of the chief of staff or the vice treasurer or any other of these positions which are simply chosen by the executive board. I recognize Senator Novak's point with regards to the executive board just filling up all sorts of positions that are supposed to be elected. Under 6.3.2, it was struck out that they must follow the current policies and procedures, rules, and regulations for a special election or appointment. I do think the wording change is a lot better under 6.3.2 that states the nominee will serve the student government at Utica until a special election or executive election is called. I just really think that 6.3.6.1 should really only refer to acting appointments for elected positions, because it doesn't make sense to me to have a position which is solely appointed, right? The Senate is not involved with its appointment at all, to have to be voted on by the Senate. So I'd like to make a motion to add under 6.3.6.1, acting appointments for elected positions must be documented in, and then everything else that's already there.
All right, we have second by Senator Fisher. Going into discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Senator Novak. Sure. So it's going to be 6.3.6.1 will now be restated for acting appointments of elected positions must be documented, and then the sentence continues. But it's adding in of elected positions. Senator Fisher.
Senator Weddle, this is so that this only affects elected positions, whereas not, interviewed positions. I yield to Senator Weddle. I yield back to the chair.
All right. Is there any further discussion for this amendment? Seeing no further discussion, we'll be going to voting.
It's got to be read twice, and we're in new business.
It's an amendment of the bill.
Oh, sorry. I forgot.
All good. Going into voting on the amendment of 6.3.6.1. All those in favor of adding acting appointments of elected positions, please raise your hand. All those opposed and all those who abstain, that passes 11-0-0. Back into the bill as a whole. Is there any further discussion for this bill? Senator Weddle.
8 states that the position of president shall be exempt from this section. I'm just wondering if there's a reason for why the SGU vice president is not also mentioned in this position, given there is an established line of succession for the vice president position, that being that the pro tempore of the Senate, if one exists, becomes the vice president. I'm going to yield back to the chair.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Pro Tem Ludewan.
Under subsection 6.3.8.
We have a motion to add the position of president and vice president. Do we have a second? Second by Senator Weddle. Moving into discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion for this amendment? Senator. All right. Seeing no discussion, we'll be moving on the vote for adding the position of president and vice president in 6.3.8. Senator Weddle. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All those opposed and all those who abstain, that passes 11-0-0.
The pro temp is in line of succession for the president, if I'm correct, right?
Are you asking if the pro temp is in line for the president or the vice president?
Because, well, the VP is in line for president, right?
Yeah.
And the pro temp is in line for VP.
Correct.
So, okay, that was what I was asking. Okay.
All right. Going back to the discussion of the bill as a whole, is there any further discussion for this bill? Pro Tem Ludewan.
So for section 6.3.0, at the end of the sentence, it says outlining the changes to their stipend and position. Policy committee did decide to take there was a subsection below that states there would be, to clarify the stipend change. However, we opted to take that out because stipend changes they fall under financial policy. So I'd like to motion to strike out stipend and under section 6.30.
All right, we have a motion to strike out stipend and. Is there a second? Second by Senator Weddle. Moving discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion for this amendment? Seeing none, we'll go into voting. Does anyone not approve unanimous approval for this amendment? Seeing no disapproval, that passes unanimously. Back into the bill as a whole. Senator Weddle.
Section A, again, the stipend part, the final acknowledgement statement, the final sentence of that states that I recognize that my stipend amount will fluctuate based on the discretion of the financial policy. The financial policy doesn't have discretion. I think it should really instead state, I recognize that my stipend amount will fluctuate based off of current financial policy, since it really should just be according to the policy. I'm assuming that's what that sentence was trying to get at. If I could get some clarification from the chair, that would be appreciated. I yield back.
I'm going to refer to Pro Tem Ludewan.
The very last page of the bill, where it has the form that the members are required to fill out before they transfer to a different position, the last sentence of the acknowledgement statement. I yield back to Pro Tem Ludewan.
Sorry, again, point of clarity. Can you restate your? I know where it is, but
The final sentence on that page, I recognize that my stipend amount will fluctuate based on the discretion of the financial policy. Policy doesn't really have discretion. Policy shouldn't really be up for interpretation. Policy just states what it states. In the case of financial policy, it's very clear with regards to those stipend changes. So I'd like to make a motion to amend that last sentence, to state instead, I recognize that my stipend will fluctuate based off of current financial policy.
All right, we have a motion to state, I recognize that my stipend amount will fluctuate based on current financial policy. Is there a second? Second by Senator Pro Temp Ludewan. Moving into discussion of the amendment. Is there any discussion for this amendment? Seeing no discussion, does anyone object to unanimous approval? Seeing no objection, that passes unanimously. Back into the bill as a whole. Is there any further discussion for this bill? Senator Weddle.
Looking at the type of change under Section B, new position details, I'm curious if you could, or if anyone could clarify the distinction between a promotion, transfer, and permanent appointment. I recognize the distinction between promotion and transfer, but if it's are those not supposed to be permanent with regards to promotion and transfer? That's really my question, if that makes sense. I'm going to yield back to the chair.
Sure. So, for example of a transfer, our acting Secretary Wu had to sign a transfer document to transfer from Chief Justice to Secretary, and in that case, it would not be a permanent appointment. It's just an acting appointment. And then, as for promotion, we don't see it often, but it's usually the case of they need a vice, like for a chair of not a chair, a head of an organization. They resign or step down, or something happens, say like a medical emergency, and they're no longer able to serve in the position. Then that would be a promotion within the org. Senator Weddle?
For Secretary Wu, for example, that would just be an acting appointment, not a transfer, correct?
It would be both a transfer and an acting
You would
appointment.
check both of them off.
Correct.
I yield.
Yes. That is true. In that case, it would be, unfortunately, both, though. Senator Novak?
Two things. Should we then change the form to say choose which apply in case it is both? Because otherwise we can't. And then two, when was this a thing? Because I remember in the past, SU did not follow a transfer form in the past for transferring positions. Because I remember at least in the academic year of 2023 to 2024, this was not followed, I believe.
I'm going to refer to the advisor on when the promotion and transfer form was created.
I would need to double check to find a definitive date. But this is a fairly new policy. I believe it was implemented in the spring semester of 2024, something along those lines. So it is fairly new. I yield.
Alrighty. Is there any further pro temp Ludowan?
After type of change under Section B, check 1 to check all that applies.
We have a motion to change from check 1 to check all that applies. Is there a second? Second by Senator Ritchie. Moving into discussion of the amendment. Is there any discussion for this amendment? Seeing no discussion on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All those oppose, and all those who abstain. That passes 10-0-1. Back into the bill as a whole, is there any further discussion for this bill? Seeing no further discussion, that concludes this bill for this week as there is no vote. So, moving on to bill number, give me 1 second. Bill number 2526-10, Senator Novak.
We, the Senate body of SUNY Poly, hereby motion to. Do we need a motion because this is a policy?
You need a motion to accept.
Okay, so I need a motion. Motion to accept bill number 2526-10.
You may continue.
We, the Senate of the body of SUNY Poly, hereby bring forth the bill Organization Policies and Procedures / Constitution Template Change to update the template for policies and procedures / constitutions for organizations, be less restrictive and give more freedom to SU organizations. The justification is...
Oh, no, don't need the justification. Okay. All right, moving to discussion on the bill 2526-10. Is there any discussion for this bill? Senator Weddle.
A representative policy committee could state to the horseshoe the rationale behind bringing this bill to the table. I'm going to yield back to Colonel Sanders.
Yes, so this bill was created over the summer. We noticed that it was a little bit restrictive towards orgs, and we recognize that orgs are very kind of versatile in what they cover and what they do, considering that any club can put up a petition to become an org. We wanted to give them a updated and slightly more open policy and procedure and constitution template, especially now considering that clubs are no longer required to have a constitution. Is there any further discussion? Senator Weddle.
I note that it states the following document shall be considered to be a template to be used by all organizations when drafting and amending their constitutions. My understanding is, compared to current policy, the addition of and amending was added. To me, that almost feels like we're being more restrictive, because when drafting the Constitution, that's your first draft, right? That's your first run through, and it would have to follow a very specific template. But past that, it can be amended any which way, which I think allows our orgs to kind of grow, develop, and adapt as they need to throughout the years, as opposed to having to continually follow the same format of the organization constitution. I recognize that we should have some consistent formats, right? Like you'll always want to have something with regards to membership, officers, enactment, and jurisdiction, and so forth. But it still feels like we're adding more restrictions rather than taking them away, because under current policy, can an org not just amend their constitution to pretty much anything they like, provided it passes the Senate? I'm going to yield back to the chair.
Is it a question like can
Yes, I suppose it is.
Yeah, so currently the org heads can work with the vice president or on their own to update their policies and procedures. That is how it currently is. Yeah. Is there a follow-up to that question?
Be adding restrictions by including this addition of and amending, because now whenever they amend their constitution, they will have to ensure that this template is followed, whereas currently they've been able to just keep amending and amending to whatever needs to be done to fit the specific organization's needs. I'm going to yield back to the chair.
Yeah, so it's always good to have something to refer to when you're making amendments or anything such as that. In the case of does it make it more restrictive, the following sentence does kind of clarifies that it must be modified, meaning that even if you have a basis, you should be changing the basis, and therefore when you're making the amendments, you can change what is currently listed here. It's just to basically further clarify that you have this should be used to make your changes based off of. However, it is not restricted, as that following statement clarifies. Senator Weddle.
It states that it must be modified, but what's sort of the point of the template then? If you're saying here's the template, now you have to modify the template, because you're not saying you have to fill it in with relevant organization information. It just says it must be modified. I'm just going to yield back to the chair.
Sure. So if you ever tried to put this template actually as it is, you would have in brackets full organization name in most places. That is the part that would be needing to be modified, but it also opens the floor for any other part to be modified as seen fit by the organization head. Well, it does allow for them to use the template as it is, but it needs to be modified so that you don't just have full organization name in brackets. Senator Novak.
Just to kind of respond to what Senator Weddle was saying, isn't the current template like basically you have to follow it 100% anyway, in which case the majority of organizations are already technically breaking policy and procedures by not following the template 100%, such as, for example, Web not having a senator, having a secretary, which is currently required by the current template?
No. The line, the template must be modified to include any pertinent information, is already in there. In the old one, too. It's already in there. The strikeout of the old, this is replacing it in the entirety of the highlight. It doesn't show the individual crossouts of every section. It was a general crossout of both documents and then substitution of the two new documents. Do you get what I'm saying? Senator Novak.
The only reason why I'm confused is because when this was brought up in policy committee, it was brought up that this was necessarily changed because the current constitution and policy and procedures template for orgs was super restrictive and that it couldn't be changed and it had to be followed, and the only thing that could be changed was the name of organizations. 'Cause I remember that was the justification that was brought up during policy committee.
Is that a question or
Question.
Senator Weddle?
Be modified to include any pertinent information of the individual organization. I'd be happy to clarify the motion if someone seconds it.
We have a motion to strike out and amending their constitution, and then following strike out the following sentence. The template must be modified to include any pertinent information of the individual organization. Do we have a second? Seeing no second, that dies. Is that a second or is that okay? Second by Senator Fisher. Moving into discussion on the amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Senator Weddle.
If the template isn't meant to sort of be a document that they have to follow so strongly after they first draft their constitution, it feels like we can simplify the section just by taking out and amending, because then they don't necessarily have to follow it. I think it makes it a lot clearer because it just states that it has to be used by all organizations when first drafting their constitution, but whenever they amend it, they don't necessarily have to follow it to the letter. The sentence, the template must be modified to include any pertinent information of the individual organization. I would hope that would be obvious, especially with regards to things like the organization's name, their purpose, et cetera, and when the Senate reviews that, they would keep that in mind. I yield.
All right. Is there any further discussion for the amendment? Is that a point of information?
Clarity, it looks like it's in two places. Which one are we amending, or are we amending both?
The
Or,
phrase
yeah.
and amending under the format of the bill, that first sentence that says the following document shall be considered to be a template to be used by all organizations when drafting and amending their constitutions. I'm motioning to strike and amending and strike the entire following sentence. I yield.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, we'll move into voting on the amendment of striking out and amending, and then striking out the following sentence. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And all those who abstain? That does not pass. 443. Apologies. Back into the bill as a whole. Is there any further discussion for the bill? Seeing no discussion, that concludes discussion of this bill. Moving on to bill number 2526-11. Senator Gillis.
Bill number 2526-11.
Second by Senator Fisher. You may continue.
We, the Senate of SUNY Poly Student Government at Utica, enact as follows: to provide CFB with additional disciplinary measures when dealing with clubs outside of the SGU financial and CFB freezing policy and other club updates.
Alrighty. Moving to discussion of the bill. Is there any discussion? Senator Weddle.
Question for our CFB representative. I'm looking at 2.13.0 and 2.13.1. Have the advisors of all the clubs that are currently active been notified of this change that CFB is looking to make? Because I imagine they would absolutely have some feedback. I yield to our CFB representative.
Trying to do during the advisor trainings, which we've had a good amount of trainings that they've been up to date on. But not everyone has been at those trainings yet, but this is just, we still have to keep moving on with our policies. So a good amount are, but some still aren't aware yet.
Alrighty. Senator Novak.
How does this work for clubs who have advisors that are, I don't know the exact term for it, but professors who are half-time
Adjuncts?
adjuncts? Yeah, how does this work for adjunct professors who are not always here on campus, or for clubs that meet at night, or clubs that meet during the weekends? Because I understand that says you can do the one-on-one, but that kind of forces those clubs to have to do the one-on-one, which then also is problematic. I know, for example, one of my clubs, Creativity Club, our advisor is Dr. Daley, and he is a adjunct professor here at campus, and so he tends not to be on campus unless he is teaching on his office hours. And this then serves as a problem that we're going to be taking up his mandatory office hours that he has to give as a professor to do these one-on-ones, which then also makes it so the students that need to talk to him for the office hours will either taking that time up or never going to be able to do these one-on-ones to meet the requirements, and we're going to be frozen because it's impossible for us as a club that was not required to meet these requirements when we were founded 3 years ago to now meet requirements that were impossible for us to meet unless we change our advisor.
CFP.
So I do understand that this can be tricky for adjuncts like you're saying, but we're running into the issue where advisors are not involved in their club whatsoever. They're a rubber stamp, and they're a pretty big piece of approving events, purchase requests, where they're using student activities fees, and if they're not involved and not aware of what's going on and can't set aside 15 minutes for a one-on-one with their club executives, then they shouldn't be in the role of advisor if they do not have time to support the club as an advisor.
All right. Senator Rose.
It like virtual. Yeah. So that hopefully should solve any issues like this if they do arise.
Secretary Wu.
Is it possible if the club advisor could just meet with, I don't know, the president or one or two members of the e-board instead of the entire e-board? Okay.
Senator Weddle.
Respond to our CFB representative's comment. Per our current policies and per SUNY policy, club advisors are not required whatsoever to be involved in the financial process. Clubs can be transferred funds, clubs can buy things. The club advisors are not required to sign off on those purchases. Organization advisors are required to, clubs are not. They're sort of included in the process for simplicity reasons. I'm just going to yield back to our CFB representative.
For our campus, which these policies are affecting, we do ask them to approve it. So we're
Advisor Artajani.
This was discussed with us and Max as well. These are internal controls that, as a new advisor to SGU, we are putting in place for multiple things that absolutely can be objected to. There are no internal controls right now. There have not been. So this is one of the things. We cannot have advisors out there saying they're doing something. We've also had situations where people have said, this is my advisor, and then when we check with the advisor says, no, I never agreed to this. So we are putting multiple things across multiple situations for accountability purposes. Advisors do have a large part in the process here, and we're making sure everyone is following that process and that they know what the process is, that they're not just signing off. We've had multiple situations uncovered recently that are much bigger than just didn't sign a purchase order. So we are collectively, between not only SGU but the campus as itself, trying to make some major policy changes for accountability purposes.
Alrighty. Is there any further discussion? Senator Weddle.
Just looking at 3.6.1, I was wondering if I could get some clarification on what exactly that's referring to. Is that they must approve the veto, or that if the extra funding request is to go forward, that it must be approved by those two individuals? I yield to CFB.
So that means they have to approve the veto, because as it stands right now, I can just veto it, and my reason can be whatever I want, and I just have to notify people. There's no actual check on that power, so we're adding in the check of my veto, where the CFB advisor and the SGU advisor has to approve that I'm choosing to veto for whatever reason is needed to be vetoed.
Senator Novak?
This is kind of going back to the last discussion point. I wasn't done bringing up stuff for that, if I can do that.
Continue.
The only other thing also with advisors having to do meetings is I know there's a lot of professors who advise like up to like 5 or 6 clubs. I'm not sure if Polly is trying to discourage that because I can understand how that can seem kind of, I guess, bad, but how would that then work for those professors who are advising like an eighth of the clubs on campus and they have to now meet with like 16 or like 8 exec boards, which is like a total of 32 people they have to have one-on-ones with, 8 meetings they have to go to once a month. And I understand, hypothetically these professors should not be doing this in the first place maybe, but this then puts the clubs that had these professors say yes to advising them in the first place now in a sticky situation where they have to transfer advisors mid-semester because their advisors decide to advise 8 clubs. I yield to our advisors.
I think it's really important to remember that these advisors are signing up for advising somebody. So if they're signing up, they have to recognize that this is what it comes with. Your advisors are supposed to be in it with you, understanding the purchase request process, understanding financial policy, understanding the events and how events work on an SGU level. And so when they're signing this document and signing on to being a club advisor, they get to know that they have to do one-on-ones a month. Or they have to, what is the other option? Attend a month. So if they're continuing to sign on for multiple clubs, that's fine, but they have to understand that it comes with more of a workload. It already does, because they already have to approve more club events, more club purchase requests, all of those pieces, so they already have more of a workload. This is just acknowledging that they have that workload.
Said that, or Senator Novak said that, if they were advising 8 clubs, they would have to do 32 one-on-ones. I think it's just one-on-one. I think it just means the advisor and the exec board, because that'd be a little much if it was every single member of the exec board. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I said 8 one-on-ones, but having to meet in total with 32 people. So I didn't mean it as in having to have 32 meetings, but still having to meet, a lot of people.
Wildcat Media.
By the executives.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Senator Rose?
Advisor thing, I think it definitely, like Senator Novak said, it could be a little messy, especially with this being added in right now. But I think it's necessary because, the club advisors need to be doing their jobs, and if they aren't now, that's why it's going to be messy. I yield.
Senator Fisher? No, sorry. All right. Senator Novak?
What I'm just trying to say is I feel like this bill should be, if it passes, be implemented at the start of next semester, not in the middle of this semester, because otherwise we're not punishing bad advisors for not doing their jobs as advisors. We're punishing clubs for having, I guess we're punishing clubs for choosing the wrong person to be their advisor, and I feel like the punishment here shouldn't be to the clubs, and they should be given time to, be able to change, because a club's gonna get theoretically. For example, this passed today, which it's not going to pass today because I don't think it's going to be marked immediate action. But if it passed today, we would then have 3 days for every single club to have a one-on-one with their advisor before November, or they would get frozen. And if this does pass in November, we're then going to have like 3 weeks for every single club to have a one-on-one with their advisor, or they get frozen. And then what happens if half those clubs then lose their advisors? That means then we have a 3-week period, because nobody's going to respond to emails over Thanksgiving break, where clubs need to get a new advisor, have a one-on-one with that advisor, all within a 3-week period without getting frozen. And that's ignoring the fact that at minimum this bill cannot be. Sorry, I have to get my calendar up quickly. This bill will not be passed until the 6th, which then means in reality they have 2 weeks in November to have a new advisor and then do a one-on-one meeting with said advisor. I think this needs to be pushed back to be either affecting at the start of next semester so that we will not screwing clubs over, or we need to do something to change this, because the fact that many clubs are probably going to lose advisors over this. I yield.
Excuse me, Pro Temp Ludowan.
Understanding of how 2.3.0 reads, it's that the one-on-one will be a thing, providing that the advisors are not already attending a club meeting per month. So if your advisor is doing their job, then this shouldn't be an issue, per my understanding of reading 2.13.0. I yield.
President Lunaharan.
So I guess the real question is, as of my understanding, is there are advisors who are advising like 6 or a lot of more clubs, and if this were to pass, they'll have to have a bunch of one-on-ones in a month immediately. So how would we like transition to make sure that these clubs get new advisors, so that the new advisors will be able to go through this process of the meetings? I yield.
Advisor Johnny.
Partially being put in place so that clubs don't get screwed over. We are going to start denying events and activities because they are not following policy, one of those being your advisor signing off on things being listed correctly. That's what your advisor is for, to make sure that steps are taken. They're not being followed. So we will start saying no to events, whatever that may be. If an advisor chooses to take on 7, 8, 9, 12 clubs, that's going to come across us. We will be reaching out to that advisor saying, you fully understand, here's your responsibility, you want to take on this many clubs. Up to this point, people are just going up to random staff or faculty saying, hey, will you be my advisor? Zero conversation, zero explanation, and they're just signing something. Yeah, sure, why not? Absolutely. Advisors need to be held accountable. Advisors need to be able to say, nope, sorry, I'm already advising 3. Is it a good idea to advise 6, 7 clubs? Absolutely not, for exactly what you're saying. We don't want to put that pressure, but as your advisor, they have a responsibility. As a club, you need to find an appropriate advisor, not go to the same 5 people advising 50 clubs. So this is a bigger scale. Your president of CFB is trying to get ahead. We will be changing on the SUNY Poly level with advisors, them fully understanding, them going through training. Yes, we are doing this in the middle of a semester. We will clearly work with individual clubs that are having a difficult time. It can be virtual. It is one meeting with your executive board or attending a meeting. That could be virtual. That could be however you want to do it. The fact that we haven't been doing it doesn't mean a reason that we don't have to do it, and we have to do it now because we are going to start denying things that aren't being followed. I yield.
Esports. All right. CFB.
That the worry is that there's not enough of a grace period, but to put it frankly, clubs could start now. They could start going up to their advisors and figuring out this process now, which again only adds about 1 week, which I understand. But it's if they're an advisor for a club, reaching out to your advisor should not be taking 3 weeks. It should be email within a week. It should not be so hard. And if it is an issue to the point where you can't reach your advisor within 3 weeks, you should probably look for a new advisor. And secondly, on the workload of the advisors, I'm not asking for a 2-hour meeting with them every month. It could be 30, 15 if it really needs to. It's just that they need to touch base so they are aware of what's happening. And to answer the other issue that's brought up is that they only need to be there for events with outside contractors. We've had issues where the advisor had no idea people from outside our school were going to be there, which this is trying to address, is that they need to be in the know, which might be a simple 15-minute meeting, might be 30. It just depends. And it shouldn't be that hard to reach out to your advisor that it takes more than 3 weeks. I yield.
Our audience member.
Is this on? Hello? Hello? Hi. So I just wanted to clarify a few things. Everyone has some very good points. I do want to speak on behalf of CFBI. I am the direct advisor. As of right now, I'm still learning the role. I'm still getting used to everything. So as of right now, I do have the acknowledgement form right here. Nothing in here states something about a one-to-one with each executive members. I'm just asking that they do go to club meetings at least one each month, just to be sure they're getting clarification on what the club is doing. They're building communication. They're aware of what they're doing in terms of their job. This document here outlines everything the advisor should do. I only created it about 2 weeks ago. Me and Kathy both looked at it. It's ready to be sent out. I am working on a presentation right now that will be sent out to all of the advisors, and they have 30 days to watch the presentation as well as sign this form and email it back to me. If they do choose that they do not want to advise anymore, that will be a greater discussion we'll have afterwards. But I feel I needed to step in because there's a lot of miscommunication, and I understand all the concerns, but I would like to address, if you have any further questions or concerns, please just talk to me directly, and we could figure this out together.
It's a day. Senator Weddle.
It seems that, as our advisor has mentioned, this was brought up due to concerns about internal controls. From my perspective, at least, the way that I see clubs, generally speaking, the 3 major things that clubs do that impact sort of campus and student government as a whole are purchasing things, right? They're allocated a certain amount of monies. Running events, which may include everything from bringing on contractors to DIY events to something comparable to pop-up events that Web does, and then travel. Advisors should absolutely be involved whenever a club that is representing student government, SUNY Poly, whatever in any capacity is going off campus. With regards to purchasing, we have a pretty extensive control process already for purchases made. For clubs to receive their money that's in their club account to begin with, they have to submit a very detailed extra funding request. For activating, they need to meet a certain set of criteria, and then when they actually go to purchase something, it has to be reviewed by the student government treasurer, student government advisor, and the director of auxiliary services, all of whom put a lot of effort and time into reviewing these purchases. SUNY policy explicitly states that those three people must be a part of the review process. It does not mention anything whatsoever with regards to advisors to the student organization, because the student government at Utica advisor is already reviewing that purchase request. With regards to events hosted on campus, I'm not really certain, unless outside people are coming onto campus, what the purpose of the advisor sort of needing to sign off on it, needing to be there is for. We're in college, we're all young adults. It's important to learn responsibility, and I think running a club is a big part of learning how to be responsible. Planning an event, as our web representative could tell you, takes a lot of time, energy, and thought, and I think we should be encouraging our students to do this independently and not have to have everything signed off on by their advisor when it already has to be signed off on by so many other people. It has to be signed off on by whoever is approving the event and engage, whoever is approving the purchase request, which is usually multiple people, booking the rooms, everything, so on. I'm going to yield to the chair.
All right.
There's a lot of hands up.
Advisor Wadsworth.
A good point. But one of the things I'll mention is that if Marissa from Web puts in a purchase request, it goes, yes, you're Marissa. It goes to the Web advisor as well. For clubs, it goes to their club advisor, right? The question here isn't whether or not club advisors should be a part of the purchase request process. They're an important part. That is part of the internal controls, is that each club has a club advisor. They cannot be rubber stamping things. You all are a separate entity from SUNY Poly. You use this space as they graciously give you. So you also have to remember that you have to make sure that there is a representative of SUNY Poly, a faculty or staff advisor, that is going to be able to help manage an event. Yes, student leaders are young adults, right? You all are young adults, but you all have an advisor. That is us, right? They need an advisor to help them when they need to, whether that's helping them develop. So say they don't know how to go to the print shop, they can help, right? We all can help as well, but that's supposed to be their first line. That's supposed to be their first line of defense. And so all this is doing is making it so that they have a direct line. They need to be held accountable, all of them, everybody here, right? This is part of internal controls, and this is something that, regardless, is likely going to happen. Can I yield to Advisor Artigiani?
Yeah. This is internal control bigger than this on the Poly side. So just as a heads up, if it's not, it will be part of our policy going forward, that if a staff or faculty signs up to be an advisor, here's the requirements and expectations on behalf of the university. I yield.
Alrighty. Senator Novak.
Happening. I'm not sure how, but I never once said that the advisors had to do an individual one-on-one with each 32 people who are advising at clubs. I'm just saying they'd have to plan a meeting with 32 different people, and as soon as anyone here who's tried planning a meeting of even 3 people it's hard to find a time that works for everyone, and then having to do that 8 times is a bit on the short end. But also, to respond to Pro Temp Ludovan, I have been to about 8 clubs on my time at SUNY Poly. Only once in one of those clubs have I ever seen an advisor actually be actively going to the meetings. Most advisors do not go to the club meetings, and I've been in so many clubs where the advisor, I don't even know the name of like half the advisors for these clubs, let alone, I mean, I'm not part of the exec board for these clubs, so I mean, still, but like, they're not showing up anyway, and the reason why I'm saying we need a grace period is not for the advisors. We need a grace period so these clubs can find new advisors who actually are going to advise, who are actually going to show up to club meetings, who are actually going to be willing to do these one-on-ones. And that's the reason why I'm saying we need this grace period, because otherwise we're punishing the wrong people. We're not punishing the advisors who just want to be rubber stamps. We're not punishing the clubs who are purposely trying to get rubber stamps professors. We're punishing the innocent clubs who had advisors sign on, as Penny said, who signed on to be doing nothing other than improving events and improving financial transactions and making sure they stick to the mission. We're punishing those clubs who advisors don't show up, can't show up, or not already doing one-on-ones. So we just need time for these clubs to actually be able to get new advisors. 3 weeks is not enough time to find a new advisor and then set up a meeting within the last 2 weeks of school. And that's what the unfairness is about this. We're not giving enough time to our student body to actually trying to fix the situation. And we're basically punishing the innocent for the wrongdoings of someone else. And this is going to make people want to run clubs. It's going to make people scared to run clubs.
All right, I'm going to cut you off right there. We're in a very cyclical conversation right now. Nothing? All right. Senator Ritchie.
Of people's points. So a lot of people have a lot of good points, but first of all, the advisors have explicitly stated that they're going to instate a policy similar
I
to this.
apologize. I'm going to cut you off. We're in
That's
a
okay.
cyclical conversation here. I would like to move on to discuss further things on the bill. Thank you. Senator Rose.
Like a thing to end what we were talking about. How long does it actually take to get a new advisor, like for a club?
I'm going to refer to CFB.
So once you find a new advisor, it's basically just notifying us. We update it and engage. They go through the training and they're done.
It feels like it's assuming that it's really hard to get a new advisor. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Senator Fisher. It's a bill. We cannot call the question this week. Well, we have a motion to end discussion. Is there a second? Seeing no second, that motion dies. CFB.
So I'm just going to kind of address everything really quickly because we do have another week to talk about this and we're going in circles. CFB is not here to punish you. I understand that sometimes it feels that way, so it's my job to make your life hard. We can help you find new advisors if that's an issue. Me and with the help of CSI, we have the ability to reach out to people. We're not here to punish you. And if you need help, reach out and we can help fix this situation. That's what we're trying to do. We have starting from today, we have about 4 weeks to figure it out. And I like to think we're pretty good at what we do, and we could probably fix almost every single issue within that 4 weeks. And if we can't, we can always work on it. I yield.
Senator Weddle.
I'd like to make a motion to override the chair's decision to end discussion on a specific topic. It seems like there were a lot of points being brought up by a lot of audience members, and while it may have been somewhat of a cyclical discussion, it feels like a very important discussion, and I don't think we should cut it off.
Sure. We have a motion to continue that discussion, second by Senator Novak. This goes into direct vote. Yes. That is correct. All those in favor of continuing that discussion of the advisors, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And all those who abstain? That dies. Back into discussion of the bill as a whole. Senator Ritchie.
What Weddle said, in my experience being in a club, you will still have autonomy. The advisors are there to support you. You can still plan your own events. You can still have the autonomy to be a leader. They are there to support you only.
We are now in open forum. Is there any discussion for open forum? Director of PR. Point of clarity, did you say clubs or committees? Alrighty. Our audience member?
It's my candidacy for senior senator. I am Grayson Weddle for those who do not know.
All right. Give me a second. Sorry, I know this is an announcement for candidacy. Our audience member?
I would like to renounce candidacy for secretary and announce candidacy for chief justice.
Who are you?
Summer Wu.
Hey. Say again? No, she just renounced her candidacy. Senator Novak.
Bringing up what our director PR said, I don't think most committees have a logo, which is why they're not on Engage.
Senator Rose.
Like we make them, or are you saying come to you and like you'll have someone make them, or either? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely consider that, making one for food.
Senator Fisher. We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second by Senator Hordern. Going into voting on the motion to adjourn. All those in favor of adjournment, please raise your hand. All those in, okay, we're going to restart that. All those in favor of adjourning, please raise your hand. All those opposed? And all those who abstain? That passes 8-1, because Grayson left. We are now adjourned.